Okay, everybody, thanks for attending. And today we're going to be reviewing concepts to provoke our research imaginations. So I'm going to be talking about the research paper and what we're after with that, what I'm after for y'all to accomplish and show you can do. Um, Basically, as with most research papers, professors are looking to see if you can. Sorry about the phone. If you can find answers to questions that you're interested in and that you know how to do research. And so, what I'm looking for y'all to do is to document and discuss patterns and discuss their interconnections. That's what we're all about in this course, is looking at how patterns form and change and evolve. And so that can be any pattern that you're interested in. I'd like it to be, frankly, something that's not about you or your well, check that, but about sort of entertainment and sort of play. I would hope it's about something more external to you and to sort of the world, something more maybe of professional interest. Okay, um, but connections between patterns. So patterns and connections between them. And you'd be using the course's perspective and its concepts. Um, Basically, that is how the evolution of everything shares information processing principles. Sorting things on shared information and looking for gradients in new information, gradients in novelty that allow you to develop more knowledge, more information, or more energy, as it were. So what you'd be doing is looking to think about in your field of study, whatever you're interested in looking at, what are some patterns of concentration showing attraction to shared information? Um, where are people interested in a shared information, and where are there patterns that show them sort of concentrating around things that they know about? And this can be people, but it can be other things as well. Okay, how do they create forums for interaction around that shared information? Um, how are media of existence, sort of shared existence, developed? Dialects, jargon, fields, okay, of energy. It could be sort of an ecosystem, the way an ecosystem develops a certain logic to it. And if you're going to survive in that ecosystem, you have to develop certain gradients of novelty, but also using the shared information. Um, or special environments like colleges, companies, and med schools. How do they include or exclude people? How do they discriminate, right, against others who don't share certain levels of information, certain kinds of information? We talked about that last time. And how do they allow specialization because of that and an increased information processing efficiency? We can't allow everybody in here. You wouldn't be interested in this. You wouldn't understand this if you haven't taken sort of the pre-med courses, or if you're not a bumblebee, you wouldn't be interested in what the other bees are doing, right? There's that kind of thing as well, certainly. Where has there been emergence in your field? Where do new bumblebee colonies emerge, and why? Um, where are new patterns and branches that have developed? And perhaps it's been a punctuated equilibrium. Maybe something new has started, and that makes for nonlinear change. So, where have sort of key moments been that have shifted, say, the culture, or shifted a species, uh, or started something new? But also, how might differentiation be occurring? How might new things be breaking off as opposed to bringing things together? Maybe emergence coming as a consequence of shared information. Differentiation can be key to subsequent syntheses later on. So, what shared information has that involved? What entropy, sort of death, decay, dispersion, or detritus? And I'll have a graphic on that in a second here. Actually, I'll probably have a graphic on part 2 of this episode. Okay, so I'm going to chop this into 2 parts, most likely. But you want to seize on a few of these concepts, just a few, as you contemplate your focus. Um, uh, active thread in a discussion on social media can be a concentration, right? And the dispersion can be the people peeling off and going back to their more homogeneous communities, for example. Anyway, there's a lot of ways of looking at it. But also, which of these concepts seems sort of incomprehensible to you? Um, and I would I'd want you to come to me and tell me, well, I don't get this part. I don't understand that. Or I don't understand it with regard to this field that I'm thinking of looking at. I think, I've got something I'm interested in, but I don't quite understand how it would apply. So let's go there. Let's talk about coevolution. By the way, when you're presenting on PowerPoint, as you all will do with your presentations, you want to think about why you're doing what you're doing. So I've got this tilted like this for a reason. Things grow upward maybe, and I can picture it sort of branching off and so on. I tried it horizontally and it was unreadable, or rather vertically. Okay, so what would coevolution be? It's concentration and or traction on the one hand, and dispersion and branching on the other hand, right? So you got sort of a tree going up one way, but sort of upside down trees going the other way, right? We're bringing them in, if you can imagine that. That may be a bit abstract, but we'll get to that. So, for example, right, with attraction, right, we can imagine how stars first formed, how planets formed just through gravity and the shared information of mass. Boy, would I love somebody to do a presentation on orbits and how orbits form. Orbits are complex systems. They're very simple, but they are. A molecule. Gee, I'd love somebody to be able to explain sort of the evolution of chemical elements and molecules. If you're into chemistry, I mean, how does that happen? Surely it has an information processing dimension to it, and bringing that to bear would be fascinating. A species, right? How does a species change? You could look at the human species, you could look at other species, and look at gradual evolution through creeps and other evolution by jerks, right? Punctuated equilibria and that kind of thing that we read about. An ecosystem. How does an ecosystem evolve? But we could also talk about things in our heads, right? Consciousness. We could go to psychology and talk about thinking patterns, OCD kind of stuff, where you get locked into patterns. Just behavioral patterns in general. Here we bring in society and so on, but speaking of which, a word or meaning is something that could be investigated. And a language. How does a language evolve? Reading some stuff on the evolution of a language would give you a lot to talk about with regard to this kind of thing. Inclusion riders, right? Speaking of culture, how do contracts evolve? Where could the inclusion rider movement sort of go? Non-white casting, if you wanted to look at sort of Black Panther and Hamilton and that kind of thing and be able to talk about that, you could talk about that sort of thing and fold in the concepts that we've been developing here. Sex and relationships. With the TED Talk that we heard and also Michelle Wolkomir's talk, that kind of thing, there'd be an opportunity to talk about the evolution of family and intimacy and relationships. You could look at, sort of a cultural phenomenon like a team fan club, right? Or an artist's fan base. And what are the things that happen there that relate to this? I've got a graphic that relates to that in part 2. A product you could seize on. How did it evolve? A company. A politician. What were the key moments for that politician, for example? And or a policy. Even micro-interactionally. A topic of conversation. Or a party. Or a person. Right? How do they emerge and evolve? Okay, so that's about 11 minutes here. I'm going to hit you with another 11 minutes in a bit, but I got to catch my plane, and I'll upload part 2 as soon as I can. But thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.